Good afternoon, everyone from Dunrovin Ranch. I am once again blessed with the company of Brandon Carpenter, my wonderful friend from the HashKnife Ranch. Hello, Brandon.
Hi, Suzanne. Hey, I think you just put yourself on mute, if you can hear me.
Ah, did I? No.
Yeah,
I think I'm on. James.
No, that was James. I'm muting the feed that you don't need. So.
Okay, should I introduce again?
Whatever you like. Sure, we're rolling.
All right, we're rolling. Okay. Hello, everyone. Little technical difficulty. I am here today with my very good friend, Brandon Carpenter from the HashKnife Ranch, who joins us every week. And I can't tell you, Brandon, how much people enjoy and look forward to your company.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, we really do appreciate this little view into your life and to your ranch and all that it takes. And I know you have part 3 of the series that was really precipitated by last summer's drought, that you had to sell off part of your herd. And I have to say, we all felt the emotional pain of that. And I know you didn't mean to convey in your video, but you did. Your voice and your face showed what an emotional and draining thing that was for you and your family. And we appreciate your sharing that with us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's difficult, but it is what it is. You can't change it. You have to roll with it. Yeah. If you lamented too much, then you would quit and go get a job in town and stay in town and never come back.
Well, that's true of so many things in life. I mean, you can feel the impact, the emotional impact, but then you have a choice. You either move on and deal with it, or you succumb to it in some way. And
yeah, one of the realities to that is that you hope that you have a choice, and you do everything you can so that you do have a choice, so that you're not forced. I say that kind of in jest, but really, you do everything you can so that you don't lose a heritage and have to sell and do exactly that, go curl up somewhere else.
And I think that speaks to retaining some flexibility and being prepared for all kinds of things. And I think if we've all learned one thing from you, Brandon, is that you are prepared and you're very creative. And so we saw last week you're modifying your equipment to deal with what you were dealt, as opposed to bemoaning the problem, just fix it. So I'm anxious to see what you show us this week.
Well, last week I modified, and what you're going to see this week is basically a creativity. I tried to adapt something that we have already to work, and it didn't quite work. And so I adapted even more and kind of created something that does work. And so you'll be able to see that. And yeah, there's frustration in that. And you try to do things as cheaply and as easily as possible, but then sometimes you got to throw that crowbar in a wallet and blow out the dust and the moths and go to town and grab some more stuff, or you just grab what's around you and start putting it together.
And I want to say that I know that you mean, when you say cheaply, that does not mean you can't end up with an end product of quality, because anything around the ranch has to last.
You can't build something halfway, I guess it's the PG term.
Right.
Yeah, because it's got to last. You have to build it so that it's not breaking down and causing you more angst. You'll see when I built this, it was this fall, and it was still, relatively warm out. I was able to work in shirt sleeves or a vest. But you don't want that to break down when it's 25 below, because then it's not only miserable, it's hurtful. And so, you want to get it so that you can make it last. And you may make improvements on it, but it may not be until next spring, after you've used it and you got some time to, put more repair or beef it up or do something different to it, modify it in another way.
Right. Continually adapting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, James, let us see what Brandon did. I'm really curious now, Brandon.
Hello from the HashKnife. Well, as promised, this is part 2 of this new hay caper we're on. I've got to take this pickup, which is set up for round bales, and be able to kind of convert this so that we can put these square bales up here, slide them up, and then maybe slowly feed them off. I don't want to have to get out and fork this stuff off, especially when it's super cold. Cows will be pushed around you, fighting for competition of what just come off of that truck. And that can definitely be a safety issue for somebody if I'm driving or Lisa's driving and one of us is out there. Usually if she's driving or with me, I'm out feeding it off, but you can sure get beat up pretty easy, a bunch of anxious cows. So I got a little something in here on how we're going to solve this problem and make it so that it's as automatic as I can make it for one person, and then actually make it so we can also be efficient about it and not have a lot of cost into it and not have to go to town, buy pieces and parts. And you know what? This is going to be one of those things where we try it and it may fail, but that's the nature of what we do. We keep trying until we don't fail no more. So hang with us on this one. We'll see where we go with it. Okay, it's measurement time, and this is just kind of off the cuff. I'm just going to grab a level, because as I pick these bars up, this is going to float with it, which is going to come off of this deck and create kind of a backstop. So I want to be able to make this as a ramp that comes up and then slopes down like a beaver tail, so that I can pick a bale up, slide it up, and lay it on, and then just push it off and it'll slide right back off. Pretty simple concept, but we got to see if we can get there. So if I bring those nearly straight up, use my level, have a high spot here, and then measure from the deck. That's about 4 inches is all. It's not bad. So if I make that ramp at about 5 inches, it'll just clear right there. And then I got to see how far we got to come out the rest of the way. That's getting pretty far out there, so that's about 26 inches. Alright, so we'll go 5 inches up. And maybe bring this out a little bit more, maybe this far. And maybe slope it down so it just misses. So it's not all that far out here. Just kind of a tag tail, or I can bring it, put it out here and add that slope out here. I don't want to do that. That's just a little bit too far, too much hanging out there. So I think the best thing to do is bring her out about where we're at, and then make that slope so she comes up about the same slope as this piece is here. And we can use that as a guide to come up and then just get past that. And we might use this hitch as something that is going to solidify the bottom of that so it holds up and supports itself. Alright, now's the time for some more cutting, grinding, welding, and cussing. I want to have enough room, it's just a little over 7 inches. So I want to have a little bit of room where if it flexes a little bit under the weight, these bales are 1,300 to 1,400 pounds. If they flex a little bit, it's not going to bind us up. We've got plenty of clearance to make that happen. So now I'm going to have to put some iron on here, and we'll make some kind of customized in-place measurements. So there is 28 inches right to there. Boy, that's quite the slope. But, as we said before, probably come in a little closer and then slope this beaver tail down some to where it meets. And if we did that about the same angle as this, piece here that holds our hydraulic ram, eyeball that, that comes down to about 2 foot. So that it just misses this piece. That might be a better way to go about that. Well, it's time for some form fitting. And sometimes that's done easiest. The good old sledgehammer and a jig. So we're going to make this piece into this bumper I talked about, and then we'll solidify that to the hitch. But first I need to pound these down so that it gets a smooth edge and roundness to it, and then we'll measure it, weld it after we've buffed it up and got it nice and clean so the bead on the welder will stick. And then we'll start, once that's done, or once I get this flattened, then I'll bend these down at the appropriate angle. Then we'll weld it all together and see how it goes. So this is the loud and fun part. Not really. It does go easier with a couple people though. Just gotta keep rolling it up. Okay, now I've got the initial flatness. I can cut my piece, buff it up, and then just weld it in. And I think we'll be good to go. Well, as you can see, I've already got some of the pipes bent for our beaver tail. I got one left to go, and I thought I would just put that on film for you. So you can see actually pretty how easy it is, but it's fairly technical because you got to heat the bottom enough that it will wrinkle and roll up, but not tear this on the top, because you can actually tear that metal in two. You got to be able to play a lot of heat over there so it just stretches the metal without breaking it or tearing it. So let's give it a shot here. Really slow so they don't tear that metal. Start to fatigue right through there. You can see it stretching those little molecules around. Boy, that's a straight line there, so I think we got us some success. Well, I'm tied off below, and this is just looking like that's about right to flake off of there, and tied up to my arms. I'll just give this a quick little boost and see what it does. Hope it holds. Oh, there's a flake coming off. All right, so far so good. Get in this thing and see if we can scatter it out. Got a little more work to do here. Getting an imbalance here, picking up my front there, so I'll have to tie it down. But I'm running out of string, and my ram doesn't want to push out without getting a bolt in there. So let's put a bolt in and see if we can do a little bit better here. Give it a little boost that it needs. It's kind of makeshift, but it does work. And a little bit more. Sliding it forward. There we go, there's another piece off. So what I might do, I hate this, but I might have to rig up a chain or something a little. Yeah, I just broke my bolt. That's typical. That happens. So I'm gonna have to rig up a chain or something. So I've got not so much line sticking out here, or I go so far and I just have to retie. We'll have to decide on that. Anyway, I knew it wouldn't work quite like I wanted the first time, but it's close. I'm back to the drawing board because that failed. Since these arms won't push things out as far as a half a bale delivered, then I need to change what I'm doing and revise this. So I built the box. This kind of goes up on top of it. We'll flatten it out now instead of having it at an angle. And we're going to put a winch on here, and I'm going to make a little I-beam to slide a pusher on the back, so we can then do it from the cab, hopefully. This is still a work in progress. Let's see how this works. Okay, that should hold. Well, because that arm wouldn't work, I'm going to have to, or I have had to revise this. But in order to make this work with a little winch, I need a piece of I-beam, basically, is the idea, and then a little shuttle on top of it that will slide along and not tip off of it and be able to push the bale off with the help of a winch. So I have to build an I-beam because they don't make one this small. So here we go. And if you're wondering what these pieces of wood are about, they're just simple shims that I've used to pick this up so it's nice and flat, so it doesn't have any bows in it. Alright, there's the top welded on to the middle. Now I've got to flip the bottom over, or flip it over and put it on the bottom. We'll see how that goes. So now I've got the bottom down here. Flip this over so I can weld that to it, and we'll have to keep shimming it up as we go along because this piece is a little heavier. Well, this just got substantially heavier, of course, but it's structurally sound. I'm liking that. All right, now we'll mount her on the pickup. Well, here's back from the drawing board when our original design wouldn't work, trying to use just these hydrobed arms and get away with that. Kind of a failure on the second half of a bale, so got to thinking about it, what I needed to do. And so I attached this winch, which is remote controlled and powered by the battery. And then Braden was home and he helped me out on some of the rest of this, where he welded this plate on. And then we've got kind of a stop bar we can pull, we can drop that out of the way if we need to. Otherwise, we put it back in where it needs to go. And then I built this rail that you saw before, laid it in there, and then put this kind of a shuttle thing that's attached to that cable. And so that'll push the bale and actually drag the bale off of the back of this thing, one step at a time. All remote control, so let's go see how this bad boy works. You'll notice I staged these bales, one on top of the other. I tried to do 3, get an extra one, but those arms just won't reach it. So I'm using a regular bale handler like you would use a round bale, and pull that down, let it about halfway here, let it grip that bale, and then let it load nice and gently. Let it pull that thing up so we have the ability to continue to use some of our equipment as designed. And there, we just let it sit. You'll notice we got a little distance there so I can take the strings off, and that first cut will drop a first leaf or so here, but you see our pulley is there and able to draw that cable down onto our winch and just pull the whole thing off. Let's go feed some hay. Here's the remote. I'm going to turn the power on this little side piece there, and then I'm just going to hit in, and we'll see if this winch draws that up. There we go. See how it's following on the track there that I put down. And it's kind of pinched back, trying to hold that all up at an angle, which allows it to go along that track a little better. And then we'll just give it a little boost or two here until it falls off. And I like it to flake a little bit finer than that, but these cows are tearing that up pretty fast. By the time I can get to it, it's already done. So we'll pull forward, feed the rest of this off, and take a look at how it's done. Yeah, we'll just go along. Kick this off a little bit at a time. Let it flake off. Try to scatter it out so they don't stand on top of each other and fight each other. Tear the ground up. And just like those two. Gotta fight. Oh, we gotta fight. Yeah, that's just kind of how it works. Like, it's doing pretty darn good. Thanks for coming along, you guys.
Brandon, that was fabulous. I have to say, every time I watch one of your videos, it brings up so many questions and reveals so much ignorance that I have about cattle ranching. Even though I've been around it most of my life, I've never lived it. I've watched it from afar. So I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how often do you feed? You know,
every day.
Every day. And is at the same time every day?
Well, I changed that, and we'll probably do a little video on that too. But when I say every day, usually it depends on snow cover and how much feed they have on the ground. You'll notice I didn't point it out, but there's very, very little to no feed on that pasture when I fed that first bale off, because not just a drought, but we had grasshoppers that come through and absolutely annihilated. We had grass. We had some there. Even though we had little moisture, there was good grass. But the grasshoppers came in and absolutely devoured it all. So we had to start feeding very early when we come off of our summer pasture that's a little bit to the west of us. And it's just the way it is. But normally November, December, we feed until it starts to green up in the spring. Depending on, again, weather conditions, those cows, when they get a full diet of hay like that, and they start seeing green grass, and they're all about going and chasing green grass. They want a palate change. So, you know, sometimes it's 5 months. I usually figure that we're going to feed for 5 months, and I like to feed every day. And I have fed every other day. I've tried different things with different feeds. You know, they're a ruminant. So, you know, they're going to be able to eat, store some feed, regurgitate, chew on it some more. And so I've been able to do that where I've done every other day, but feed them twice as much. And, you know, it's worked that way as well. Sometimes just to be a little bit more efficient, but this is a little bit different feed. We're not feeding grass hay this year. This is alfalfa hay. We don't normally feed that. And I really want to watch these cows and how they're holding with the protein levels and wherever they're at, in whether they're losing weight, gaining weight. And then I'm adjusting the amount of hay. One day I'll feed 3 bales, another day I'll feed 2, and then 3 back to back. You just never know. I watch how much they clean up. If they clean their feed up, then I'll feed them. What I'm doing, I want them to leave just a little bit so I know they're not hungry. And then I just adjust every day to that. But when I say every day, I don't mean every day of the year. It depends on what grass is there.
Yeah, I wondered about that because, you know, commonly horses are fed twice a day, and we only feed our herd once a day. And like you, I put out enough feed so that the next day I want to see a little left over. I want to see that there's still something that they can scrap for a little bit there. And then I feed them right before the coldest time of the night, of the day, right at the end of the day, so that I know that they're really eating heartily through the night, that they're generating enough heat for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, I don't know anything about cattle and how they feed, but at some point, Brendan, I would really appreciate your taking us along on the different kinds of feed for both your horses and your cattle, the difference between grass hay and alfalfa. I feed only grass hay to my horses. I don't feed alfalfa at all.
Yeah, we don't either. We don't feed alfalfa to horses. It's my great uncle was a phenomenal hay raiser. I mean, he made the best hay in the world, and he put up a lot of alfalfa. And if you asked him, he said that stuff isn't even fit for sheep. It's good for getting a lot of weight, and that's when you're making hay and you're selling it by the pound or by the ton. The more yield you get weight-wise, the better it is for you, and that's why everybody feeds a lot of alfalfa to their cattle, because you can get a lot out of it and a lot of weight, and they do fine on it. Horses, it's not. That's not a good thing. It's a little too high protein generally, and then the calcium's a little bit high in it as well. So, well, yeah, we'll do that one day. We'll make a video on the different types of hay. It might be kind of a short one because it's pretty simple, I think.
Well, it is rather simple, but then you also have the cutting and what that means, you know, and what that means in terms of the protein and the moisture content. I'm really a fanatic at looking at moisture content. Yep. So, I mean, hay's not just hay. No, there's a science to it. There really is. Yeah, and then there's some, here in the valley, we've had some grass hay that's been contaminated by some of the chemicals that are used on some of the roads, which then can impact lactation in mares. I mean, it's really an interesting thing. You really had to be careful, not just what you're feeding, but where it came from. Yeah, it's not a straightforward deal. No, it's not. Yeah. And the other thing I have absolutely no experience with is flatbed trucks. Okay. And so when you buy a flatbed, I assume that you have integrated hydraulics to lift something up. And that's part of what you buy, if that's all integral to the truck. Yeah, that flatbed that you see used to be on another pickup. And a number of years ago, God, it's probably been 15 years ago now, my dad was trying to feed hay, and he was devising, just like I was doing, a spear that he could use to come along and lift it up off the ground on the back of the bumper, take it out to the cows, spread it. And we didn't have as many cows then because we were heavy to horses. And so
he was trying to do that, and he was getting a little older, and it was not fun for him. And I said, you know what, this is nuts. You need to take this pickup over to a dealership. This hydrobed is where what it is. There's different brands there's Do Easy, there's all kinds of hydrobed, just different stuff that different manufacturers have. And I told him, you need to have that pickup over this other town on this day. And he says, what for? And I said, don't worry about it. It's kind of a little surprise. So he took it over, and we picked him up, and we left, and they were installing this, taking the bed off of the pickup, the normal bed, and sticking this on it, and then putting the hydraulics on it and mounting those in. And those hydraulics are driven off of a pump up underneath the hood, so it's part of your regular fan belt is running off of this. And got it done, took it home, and he was learning how to use it. I gave him a couple, 3 days, and I called him one night and I said, hey, how's that hydrobed working out? Because this thing cost about almost $13,000 for that, to put on and to purchase it. And he says, ain't worth a damn. I'm like, oh, God, what's the matter? He goes, it won't open gates for me. And so, that was a rousing success. But, that has wore out one pickup, and that pickup was largely wore out anyway. But your feed pickups are your older ones that, they can get banged around a little bit, and you don't care quite so much if something happens to them, but they got to function. And so that is something that did not come with the pickup. But when we retire that pickup, then we'll pull that bed off and put it on the pickup that I normally run for our better pickup now.
Right. You always turn you buy a new pickup, your old pickup becomes the farm pickup, and the farm pickup stays until you have to push it off a cliff.
That's right.
Yeah.
When they tell you, when the dealership says, no, you just go ahead and keep that, you've got your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, so the pipes that you used on the bed, it almost looked like a panel, like a corral panel, because it had the spacing, although I noticed there were 6, and normally you only have 5 for a panel, a horse panel or a round pin panel or whatever. Can you explain? I mean, there were some vertical supports there. Mm-hmm. Where did you get the pipes from?
You're exactly right. You got a good eye there. Those are actually, and you can buy the corral panels in different lengths and different heights. And I like to use the six rail because we got, we're using a lot of cattle in them, and they'll certainly hold a horse if it'll hold a cow.
Right.
So they're about 48 inches tall, 50 inches, I think, something like that. So you pull them off the ground a little bit, and it gets you almost to 6 foot, about 5.5 foot. And so using that was left over from a tag end where we were only, on 12-foot centers, and they're a 24-foot panel. Right. So I pulled that panel off that had been, laying there in the bone pile where you're saying, someday I might use that. Well, that was the day. Yeah. And so I used that, and then I put some more verticals, some more stiffeners in there to make it stronger than what had come from, the people who built panels, so it would hold that weight, not flex quite as much. Yeah.
And then I also noticed the ubiquitous use of baling twine. My goodness.
Well, and what I was trying to do with the twine is that twine comes, that's what holds your bales. Right. And these are large bales. There's a 3 foot wide, 4 foot tall, or 3 tall, 4 wide, and 8 long in foot. And so it takes 6 strings to hold those bales together. I was just trying to utilize the strings themselves. Right. As to push that off. I tied those up on the bottom and then tied them to the arms, and then was just trying to drag them off. And it kind of worked, but it was not what I wanted. So that's why we kept going.
Yeah, it worked on the front end of the bale, but not the back end. And yep. I assumed that there was that would have been a function also of stretching, and that kind of. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't stretch all that much, but it certainly went beyond the length of what those arms could pull it, without having to reattach and drag them again. And that would have been brutally ugly in a really cold weather every day, climbing up on there to do that. It's like, no, I don't want to do that, especially if I have to have Lisa out there and I'm in the warm cab. That would never fly.
So now you have 2 completely separate mechanisms, one for round bales and one for square bales. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I've built that so that the length will just work where I can still pick up a round bale and lay it up on the back and go feed it off. I can still do that.
That's great.
That's how I feed our horses. I've got some grass hay that is in the big round bales. And so I take that out, and since these horses are all in the pasture, actually all the horses, I don't feed them every day. I give them free choice because they're out, roaming, and I just watch them. And every 4 or 5 days, depending on how many horses I got there and how cold it is, I just keep watching until I almost clean it up and then give them another bale.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Brandon, I just really appreciate all of this. It's just so interesting to me to see all the intricacies of the working ranch. And I kind of want to reiterate, the drought caused the lack of hay, but the drought probably also encouraged the grasshoppers. I mean, I think grasshoppers are commonly associated with drought conditions, are they not?
They seem to be. When we start to see grasshoppers in the spring or early summer, and you see those little tiny guys, you really hope that you can get a stretch of rain. If you can get a week or 10 days of cool, wet weather, generally they'll die. They'll die out. They either get a fungus around, where they breathe, or they just get a kind of a pneumonia type ailment in their air sacs. I'm not sure exactly which. I don't care. I just want them to die. So
right.
And I want the birds to be petitioning the government for free cheese. I don't need them eating on grasshoppers.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really a compound blow. The price of hay goes up, and the quality and amount of grass that you have naturally on your pastures goes down.
Yeah, and we've had a huge increase in the trucking for fuel costs is enormous. I was just looking the other day, Kaylin and I were talking about it. The one truck driver brought just almost 200 ton, and the bill just for trucking was a little over $18,000 just to bring it in.
Yeah.
And then I had another 130 ton, just short of 130 ton from another gentleman. And that was, you're looking at, oh my goodness, that was about $5,000, $6,000 because he gave me a really good break because it was included in the price of the hay. So I didn't pay separate for the trucking on that, but still it was, we're pushing $250 a ton, $275 a ton to get it in, which is exorbitant.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of the reason why the cows had to go, so they could pay for hay for the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. This is a very precarious industry that you are in, Brandon, and it's clear to me that it's the love of the lifestyle that keeps you going with such, uncertainty, both in terms of the weather and the conditions and the financial aspects, many of which are just beyond your control.
Yeah, most of them are, and it's and the markets, the same way. We it seems like a broken record when we talk about it, but it's been the same way since my grandpas were doing this. So we always say, and it never meant as much to me until I was the one responsible for it. It did, but it didn't. But next year will be better. We always talk about next year will be better.
Yeah, next year country. That's where all ranchers and people in ag live.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. I really mean that, for taking us along. And I hope that this winter is bringing you some good moisture. We've gotten quite a bit on the west. How are you doing over there on the east side?
It's we're behind still. We're in a severe drought situation still. And it was snowing today when I was feeding this morning. By the way, that thing works tremendously well. I haven't had any issues with it. It's nice to be able to feed that off. The worst part is when I get a bale that wasn't put up right, and it doesn't flake off what I want, but it has flawlessly worked. So even when you're out there and it's cold and snowing and you're hoping for more snow, I don't care how much snow we get. I want snow. We got to have the moisture. So we're set for it. We're ready for it. And when I exchange my felt hat for a rabbit fur cap, it's cold. And I've had to do that already a couple of times so far this winter.
Yeah. Well, let's hope you get a lot of snow between now and the end of March.
Yes, let's hope so.
That would be really helpful.
Yes.
All right, Brandon. I will see you next week, I hope. And
oh, yes.
And again, I really appreciate your taking us along with you, and you always enlighten us on so many aspects of ranch life.
Well, I'm glad you guys like it, and it's nice to share this and kind of show some of the good and the bad and the ugly. Here I am. So,
no, that's the good part.
oh, God. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Brendan, and goodbye to everybody. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.